Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, today I have a guest who has an inspiring story that I promise you will stay with you long after you've finished listening to today's episode. My guest's name is Firdosh, and she refers to her powerful origin story as a ride that changed her life. And it began with a very human story about breaking the vicious cycle of centralised ride-hailing apps such as Uber and high commissions that ultimately leave drivers trapped in a world with little or no profits. But I wanted to learn more about how it inspired her to become a non-technical founder and go head-to-head with Uber. It really is an incredibly powerful one. As you're listening to today's episode, or when you finish, look up DRIFE, D-R-I-F-E. Have a look, learn more about the story. It really is powerful. But for now, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Bangalore in India so we can speak with Firdosh right now about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Firdosh Sheikh. I'm co-founder and CEO of DRIFE. DRIFE is world's first decentralized ride-sharing platform. That's about me.
It's fantastic. And it's incredibly cool what you're doing here. And I'm looking forward to diving a little bit deeper into it all. But before we do, I've got to ask, can you share your origin story? Where did your passion for tech come from? And what put you on this road you're traveling on right now?
So the truth is, I don't belong to the tech industry. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. It's like CPA and CFA in other part of the world. Never thought I'll do anything in tech, like specifically, running a tech company. But I always say this, I feel it was destined to happen to me. I was working with Microsoft and two different hedge funds before I started this journey. And in my head, I wanted to be a CFO of Microsoft India at one point in my life. That was my goal in life. But I'm also that person who was using ride-sharing platform ever since they launched in India. I left my home when I was 16. I went to the capital of India, which is New Delhi, for my studies. And I started using Uber and Ola, that's a local company in India. And I was using them all the time to commute because that was about convenience. And one night I was traveling with an Uber driver, going to the airport. And little did I knew was my life was about to change. And it was a kind of a journey. I took a lot of time, countless time you take similar kind of ride. And was always about convenience for me, a stress-free journey. And obviously I didn't know what's going to happen next, which will change my life as well as which can potentially change life of a lot of people. So as soon as I got into that cab, this driver said, "Can you please cancel the trip? I'll still take you to the airport, but pay me $100 less." And, I asked a very basic question that anybody would have asked in that situation, like, why? Why are you asking me to cancel the trip? Why do you want to take me for $100 less? And this driver told me about his situation where he was getting only 65% of the fare I was paying. And it was a shock for me because I heard about stories, and a lot of us heard about the story where we heard that, ride-sharing companies are doing really good for drivers and drivers are making really good money. But this driver was telling me a story which is very different. He told me about how he's struggling to make his livelihood and how he feels stuck in the vicious circle because every other ride-sharing company works on the similar business model of charging high commission. And that's where I started, started speaking with every other driver I started traveling with. So I spoke with 1,000+ drivers before I decided I'm that person who can make that change. Not even, knowing about the fact that how I have to do it because I don't belong there. I don't know how to build an application, but so compelling was my desire for that change that I started looking past my own professional experience into an area which I had no experience. And it was very clear to me that if I don't do it today, someone else will do it tomorrow. And I don't want to be that person sitting back and regretting that I didn't have enough courage to do that. So that's my story. As I said, it was destined to happen to me. When I look back, I feel the same. Didn't belong here, but now I'm here doing my best.
You really are, and you certainly belong exactly where you are right now. And it's such an inspiring story, though, because I think there's so many people that have great ideas. They come across a problem, they might sit around and complain about it, but think, well, I'd love to do something, but hey, I'm not technical, so I can't. But that is just not true anymore. There are so many non-technical founders out there. And in some ways, I think it's better that way. It gives you a completely different perspective. And the way that you've just gone out and I'm going to solve this problem is amazing. And I've had a similar conversation with an Uber driver myself. So I know that problem, and I've heard a very similar story. So that path then, that led you to DRIFE, which I believe is a decentralized model that's reimagining that broken and ethically challenged Uber model that we all know about. But can you introduce the listeners to it and what makes you different from, let's say, Uber and Lyft?
So, in continuation of the story that I just told you about, coming across the problem of high commission. Initially, I thought, okay, the problem is just about someone charging huge commission. With time, I realized the problem is not about commission. It is about the existence of a central party who is able to control everything and anything in this ecosystem. Ride-sharing platforms started with manipulating the ecosystem for their profit motive to a time now where they exploit the ecosystem. The whole idea of technological disruption in the mobility or the ride-sharing industry was to uplift the driver community as well. Now, if you look at all the ride-sharing companies that exist in the world, they are multi-billion-dollar companies. But if you look back at the value creator, those are the drivers who took them to $1 billion valuation. If they're still struggling to make their livelihood, it itself says that something is broken and there's a huge gap. So this is where we said, we have to build something which connects driver and riders directly with each other without the existence of a central party to control things. With DRIFE, our very basic USP is driver get to earn 100% of the fare that a rider pays, making sure he has more and more viable source of income. At the same time, because we don't charge commission, we will not have a profit motive. So we'll never manipulate or exploit the ecosystem. So we will not do price manipulation or add unnecessary surge prices because I'm not getting anything out of it. So I can be always fair and transparent because that's a platform we're building. DRIFE is built by people who were using ride-sharing platform for the people who are actually connected with this whole ecosystem. So the value, it's not only just value being shared among two parties, it's also the reward, because at the end of the day, it's a driver who spent 12, 16 hours on a daily basis behind the wheel. He deserves to earn the money that you as a rider is paying. That's a very basic with which we started our journey of DRIFE.
And for any techies listening, if we dare to look under the hood, can you expand on the technology that's behind DRIFE and also how it uses blockchain and crypto to bring to life this decentralized model that you've created?
There are a few reasons where when I started looking at the problem and I said the solution is not charging commission. When I said the solution is not charging commission, you have to come up with a tech stack that's not very costly, that bring down your cost. And then you can be someone who has to be transparent. Now, transparency as a whole is a far-sighted dream in transport industry as a whole. The first thing that I was looking to achieve was cost reduction. The second thing I was trying to achieve was transparency. And that's where we came across blockchain. So public blockchain actually brings much needed transparency into the ride-hailing industry and ensure fairness. In a way that, the platform is operated. It can effectively increase the openness, transparency, accountability for both the value creators in this ecosystem. With DRIFE, obviously, we have a very specific use case of blockchain. It's not like how Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies use cases for us. It is about the ride journey. We use smart contract to do our fare calculation, our driver allocation, making sure that it's transparent, and be fair, and you can verify that information all the time. Because for a ride sharing platform, the most important thing is the fare that you're paying. Is it fair enough for you at that point in time? And the driver that's been allocated, has he been treated fairly in that ecosystem? So that's where we use blockchain for a very specific use case that we want to have in place and what we want to achieve using blockchain.
And for all the ride hailers out there that are used to using, let's say, Uber and Lyft, etc., can you just walk me through how it all works from their point of view? Is it a very similar app, and they just hit a button to get a car in exactly the same way?
Yeah. So let me tell you this. I have spent like 2 years building this application because there's this very basic problem with blockchain and crypto ecosystem as a whole, that everybody is building application for this very specific ecosystem that understand blockchain. On the other hand, I was building something that will be used by people who might even not have a basic knowledge of what blockchain is or what cryptocurrency is. I wanted to be very sure that I build an application that I can use as a rider. Only then I let it out to for the people in the world to use it. So by the look and feel of the DRIFE application, the flow is almost same as how an Uber or Lyft application work, because the basic flow cannot be touched because people have been trained that way to use the ride sharing application a certain way. So when you look at DRIFE application, you'll not feel like, okay, I'm using something very different, which has like a new age technology. You will not feel that at all. Why we are using blockchain is to make sure we can give the benefits that blockchain provide to the people out there and not get them overburdened by the fact that I'm using that technology. It's very similar when you look at the application. Obviously, with DRIFE, as I said, DRIFE is, ride hailing reimagined. Your experience is going to change, which you will know once you will see the application live in Bangalore.
And for that passionate the Uber user that's listening to this podcast now, thinking, well, Uber works fine, I know how it works and everything works fine for me. How would you pitch DRIFE to them and try and tempt them over to you as a rider? What would you say to them, and why that industry is so broken?
So, there are two different kind of audience specifically who use ride sharing platform. One is someone who's using frequently, for whom everyday commute is dependent on this ride sharing platform. And there are few people who use it on and off based on their requirements. Like, I just want to go to airport, then I use Uber. And there are people who are using for everyday commute. Now, my attention is for the people who use Uber and other application on day-to-day basis, because they know the pain points better than anyone. They have seen the price changing every other day. They have seen the surge price getting implemented on and off without you even understanding why that happened to you. Now, I'm going to give you a very basic example that specifically in Bangalore, in India, we have seen a problem. A lot of time you book a taxi, then you get a call from your driver, and your driver asks you these three questions: where are you going, how much you're paying, how you're paying. When you give these three answers, the driver cancels the trip. The reason why your driver is canceling the trip is because he don't have willingness to go for that ride. That tends to give you an extra effort where you have to spend more time booking another cab, going through that same journey. With DRIFE, you'll not have to go through this journey of, looking for a driver for like 10 or 15 minutes and still not getting something. That's going to change for you. Secondly, our price is very different and economical from other ride-sharing platform, because we have taken away all the unnecessary component from the fare calculation that were always going to your ride-sharing company but were never passed to drivers. If you look at your application and download an invoice, you'll see some charges like customer handling charges, internet handling charges. These are the charges that's been collected from you. And this is dynamic. This charges keeps changing. That's been taken from you has never been passed to driver. So we have taken away all the unnecessary component from the fare. So your fare is always economical as compared to other platforms. And there is no such multiplier, which is called surge or prime time pricing.
And as someone that got hit by that surge pricing, I can I can't tell you how much. I appreciate what you're saying here. I think it was Manchester Airport that I ended up landing, and it should have been £90 to get home. And I landed. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. No other options. No public transport, and surge pricing went up to £300. Let me tell you, that hurt my pocket that night. But I had no option.
The same happened. Same happened with me. I was in Dubai last week, and I have to travel back to India. I had a flight, and then for the airport, it showed me like somewhere around 5x the fare I have to pay to get to the airport, because it was like a India-Pakistan match happening in Dubai. But the roads were like almost as same as it was on all the days. Just because there's some event happening, you're adding a surge to your fare, although like nothing else changes on the road. So it's crazy, and you can never go and question anyone about the price they are charging you.
Absolutely. And from a driver's point of view, what does DRIFE offer them?
So for drivers, the most important benefit that they get is get rid of that whole ecosystem where they're paying 20, 30, 40, and I don't know how much percentage of commission a driver pays on daily basis, because I have seen different application where driver tried to, where I was trying to understand how much commission a driver is paying, and believe me, you can't verify that. For if there's an airport ride, a driver is paying more commission than a ride to a different location. So even driver have no idea. With Drive, there is no commission at all. So if someone is paying 20-30% commission to the other platform, he'll take home that money with him. And that's the most important factor that drivers are looking for. And moreover, we are also trying to be a human company, I'll say, where we are taking care of basic needs that driver have, like with our plans in place, driver get to have all the insurance that they should have in place. We have tied up with companies who can provide drivers with the health insurance, road accident insurance, health insurance. So all of that has been taken care at Drive. It's just very, very basic thing that I want to say is like we care. And will always care, because those are the value creator, and they deserve all the respect, and everything that should belong to them must belong to them. So it's just not the higher income, but it's a whole new experience. I'll say more than anything else, they will get their freedom to choose for themselves. A driver will know any information that he should know before he accepts the ride, which is very important to them, which has been taken away from them.
And before you came on the podcast, I was doing a little bit of research, and I noticed you've got a big launch coming up on the horizon in the next couple of weeks. Is that something you can expand on today?
Sure. So we are like 3 weeks away from the launch, and it's a very big thing specifically for me, because I spent 2 years building this, and 90% of the time people told me this is a surreal idea, way too ambitious and way too crazy to build something like that. And always everybody said, like, in theory it looks nice. Do you really think that you can pull this off on roads? And I can very proudly say today that, we are pulling this off on roads, and we are going live in Bangalore in India in 3 weeks. And so exciting time. There's a lot happening here in Bangalore at our office. And we're very excited about our launch.
I absolutely love that. And let's say if we fast forward 12 months and you've gone through the big launch, things are growing nicely. What does the future of ride hailing look like, and what excites you about that future that you're helping to build there?
So I feel and I believe that mobility as a whole plays a very important role in how society function and will function in future. And for me, the future of mobility is decentralized and is on blockchain. And people are not moving less, while the need to move has always increased. So it's not about traditional driver-owned cars. We are moving towards EVs and more infrastructure. People look for a one-click mobility solution. With Drive, what we are trying to build is more of a peer-to-peer network where you don't have to be dependent on any third party for you to move. You can make that decision on your own and be in control of that decision. The idea for next 6 months is obviously to concentrate on the launch in Bangalore. But because Drive works on a franchisee model, which is very interesting model, where if you are in any part of the globe and want to take up Drive operation, you can do that. And that's something we have got a lot of interest in. We are already working for a launch in 5 more countries, like just parallelly with our launch in Bangalore. So you'll be able to see DRIFE in at least more than 2 countries.
Absolutely love that. And we started the podcast today talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. And I always like to finish my shows by asking the guest, what was the soundtrack to their career in tech? When things were hard, is there a particular song or piece of music that you turned to that helped you along your journey, or maybe just helps you get your head in the zone before a big meeting? And so I'm going to ask you, what is your song and why? We'll add that song to the Spotify playlist. Please tell me it's going to be Drive Me Home by the Cars or something like that.
I have learned something in my whole journey of, building DRIFE is like, you can be anything, you can have any emotion, but you cannot be afraid. Yeah. Fear is not an option at all. And that's where, every time I feel like a little scared of, what people are going to think, what's going to happen to me, because a lot of time people said like the fight that you're getting into is a huge fight with a huge player in this world. So this is a song that I listen to. It's by Eminem called I'm Not Afraid. I'm not going to sing it because I'm very bad at singing. But I'm not afraid to take a stand. It's been a ride.
What an amazing choice. I'm not going to ask you to sing it. Maybe when we get you back on next year. But no, I will proudly add that to the Spotify playlist. And we will have people listening all over the world. And anyone wanting to just find out more information about DRIFE, what's the best way of finding you guys online and reaching out to your team if anybody's interested too?
So our website, which is drive.io, will give you all the information about what DRIFE is. We are most active on Telegram. So you can find us on Telegram, which is drive_official chat. You can tweet to us on our Twitter, or reach out to me on Twitter. I'm quite active.
Well, I always say at the end of every episode, technology works best when it brings people together. And when listening to your story there, I'm imagining you sat in that Uber car, listening to that story, thinking, how can I make a difference here? But then thinking, I'm non-technical. I don't belong in the world of tech. And then you're turning to help from your friends and they're saying, you're being too ambitious. You think you can pull this off? And you're surrounded by all that doubt and fear that would just halt everyone in their tracks, but you've pushed through that and have created a real solution and making a difference there. So this is one of those stories that's going to stay with me for a long time. So thank you so much for taking the time to share that with me today.
Thank you so much, Neil, for having me here today.
Wow, what a powerful origin story there. I can see why she called it the ride that changed her life, and that very human story of breaking the vicious cycle of centralised ride-hailing platforms such as Uber. And also the tech story of how it works and how she's using blockchain and crypto. And of course, why the ride-hailing industry in its current state is broken. I mean, if we're honest, Uber is not making any profits. And for the most part, many of the drivers are not either. So it certainly gives me food for thought. But more than anything, I think it's Firdosh's story here. She was a non-technical founder. And everywhere she turned, she was told by those closest to her, hey, you're being way too ambitious. Do you really think you can pull this off? Nobody's going to win in a battle against a company like Uber. But she's pushed forward. And as a result, there's a huge release coming out. And we're going to be hearing much, much more about DRIFE. And all I say is remember where you heard about them first. And don't forget that story. If you come across a problem and you think, hey, I'm not technical or I don't have the skills to create a solution, that is not an excuse. So hopefully somebody somewhere listening to this podcast anywhere in the world will be inspired by this story and go and make their own difference in the world too. That's my cheesy ending for this podcast, but it's true. I genuinely believe it. But please, I'd love to hear more stories like this and get them on this podcast. So email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And wherever you're listening in the world, please, if you can help this podcast beat those pesky algorithms by leaving a rating and review, it really helps bring more people to this little podcast community that we've got here. That in itself could prove that technology works best when it brings people together. But enough from me. I'll be back tomorrow waiting in your podcast feed. But thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.